Okay, this video is going to be on my current Wolcen build. This is my first main character that I've made, and you can see right now I'm up to uh, level 139 expeditions, and you can see my gear here is pretty not amazing. This is probably one of the best items I have. I don't have any other legendaries or anything too insane. Here's my bow. Not super insane or anything either. You can see it's level 79 even, so I could definitely upgrade this. I have one going right now in the uh, like end game, whatever Champions of Stormfall missions and stuff, and it's using a bow. So let's start off with the skills. So I guess the easiest way to do this is probably to start with railguns. So you can see I have the passive rage generation, and if I go in here to skills. My railgun, this is one of the most important runes, grants rage if fired at the first charge level. So you can see if I use a bunch of my rage on wailing arrows and stuff here, this generates roughly like 200 rage or something per cast, and you can fire it pretty easily. So that just keeps my rage topped up, so I don't need any extra maximum rage or rage generation really. And then when combined with transfer time reduction, which you can get from support 3 sockets on your accessories, that pretty much fuels your generation for your other abilities. The only real main one that you spam is Wailing Arrows. Then the other runes here, I have reduced rage cost. That reduces the... If I like get myself down to 100 right now, for example, I can't cast it until I have 110 rage, and then it generates more beyond that. And you can see it does have that gray bar kind of where the transfer time comes into account, so reducing that does help you kind of get the rage faster. The rest is just kind of increasing damage. This is the other most important rune, increasing 100% chance to stasis, and so this is how we are proccing one of our passive nodes for extra damage. Other stuff, just increasing ailment damage from the shock. You don't want to transfer this into frost damage, because this is your only source of shock ailment, and we can get freeze elsewhere. Then it's just increasing damage on people in stasis, some crit damage, and a chance to inflict ailments for the shock. So we don't use our basic attack almost at all. Our next most important ability is Wailing Arrows. This will apply burn and then whatever our highest ailment is. So we convert into fire in order to get the burn ailment. So right now we have shock, stasis, and burn. That's 3 out of 9. Although I'm not sure if stun counts as an ailment, so maybe it's just 8. But anyway, so this is probably the most important rune. This reduced cooldown rune is very nice, and then the ailment damage is also pretty nice. Those are probably the 2 most important runes. When you're early on, you probably will need the cooldown reduced upon killing an enemy, but you can see I have a lot of cooldown reduction both from gear and from the passive tree, so my cooldown is pretty short, where I ended up not needing this, just because it reduces maybe like 0.5 seconds per enemy killed or something. I don't know the exact rate on this. It would be nice if we had tooltips. There's some other good runes in here. Let's see. The ailment chance is not bad. The slow we don't need. The rage cost we don't need. This you don't want, because you want it to hit multiple times so that you have more chances to apply the burn and the poison technically as well. And then this might work, but I think it's kind of bugged with the ghost ally thing. You can see when I pick these, my average damage doesn't decrease at all, whereas here this reduces my average damage by like 80% or something. So I think this is bugged, or it's not displaying correctly. I don't know. I didn't want to bother trying to figure out what was wrong with this or how to scale it, and when it was worth it, so I'm just going with the extra area for now. And so you can see that fires off, and we get the 2 extra nodes here. The targeting on this is kind of weird. I can't tell if it does it automatically. Like sometimes it does it where they're perpendicular from you, and then sometimes it'll do it where the 2 circles are kind of just, they seem almost seemingly random, but they also seem to somehow sometimes target enemies. So like if there were enemies on top of me and way over here, that it would target it more this way and not perpendicular, and it would be almost parallel with the direction I'm shooting it. It's kind of weird, the targeting on this. I haven't quite figured that out. Next up, while leveling, I used the Sting skill for quite a while. You can see it's level 68, but this ends up dropping out. You could probably scale this if you went a Pierce build, but that's not what we're doing right now. Mark of Impurity This is what you use basically on bosses, and then in super late game, you, similar to Woody Joe's build, use it as a explosion of the maximum health, and then you spread it to surrounding enemies, and this is how you burst down the bosses and stuff using the trash explosions. Otherwise, you just want it more vulnerable to damage. And then also, let's see here, the curse stacks is also pretty good before you really get use out of these two runes, and you're just using it on bosses or maybe like the rare single like orange champion dude or whatever. The curse stacks on this is also pretty good because curse increases the damage that enemies take, and I believe that works out to be a multiplier almost. So this rune is also pretty good, but we don't actually need this rune in the end because next we have Dusk Shroud. And so Dusk Shroud has here, it applies curse stacks. It's only 1 compared to 10. But you can use this to apply the curse enough anyway, and then from your skill tree, you'll actually, this one stack will actually apply 6. And so as long as, and the skill duration is 4 seconds, I'm not sure if it applies multiple times over the duration, but you can also get the cooldown on this to be pretty small. You can see mine is currently 3.2 seconds, and you can also, let's see here somewhere, I think there's one more rune that increases the duration. Oh yeah, here, I already have it. So normally the skill lasts 2 seconds, and here you can make it 3 seconds. So my cooldown being just barely above this, let's see, I can't really demonstrate this right now, can I? Maybe I can if I have one of these other items. Let's equip this real quick. And do I have a chest piece with cooldown reduction? Yes. And those are good enough. So now you can see my cooldown on this is 2.5 seconds, and the skill duration is 3 seconds. There's currently a bug, or just it doesn't work correctly, or you just need to be aware of this, but if I activate this ability and then it'll come off cooldown at 2.5 seconds, but the skill duration is 3 seconds. If I activate it again before the 3 seconds is up, I can use the cooldown, spend the rage, and I will not go invisible and not get any of the benefits, and the skill doesn't give me any movement speed. It doesn't give me stamina recharge points. So this is how we fuel our dodge rolls. If you go into the Gates of Fates, for example, there's some stuff like this, plus stamina point, and then stamina regeneration rate. There's some over here in Duskglaive as well, I think. Where is that? Up here, stamina point. Let's see, where is it? There's stamina somewhere in here. Stamina point. Maybe it's not in here. And there's also more over here, stamina rate and stamina points. Those nodes on the tree are really bad. You don't need them at all. So if you don't have as much cooldown reduction, let me just swap these back real quick. Then you can just use this, spam dodge rolls, and you can see it's basically up. By the time I dodge roll, I get a little bit of movement speed, so I have a little bit of downtime. So now I can demonstrate. Let me just get those cooldown items back again, real quick. I would right click, but it's buggy sometimes. Now you can see, so for example, I spam on my dodge rolls, I get 2 back, but now I'm going to activate it too early, and you can see I don't get the dodge rolls back. It drops the cloud, but I don't get the movement speed buff down here. You can see these 2 buffs, which are increased critical chance and the movement speed. So that is a bit buggy, so you just have to be aware of that. If I got enough cooldown reduction, because every level on this is 0.1 off the cooldown, eventually you would probably want to just take this off so that you could more easily spam this. Because right now, like, I can essentially only spam this at a floor of 3 every 3 seconds, whereas with this off, I could spam it at a floor of every 2 seconds. So this would allow me to spam it more. I would have slightly less invisibility uptime, but that's less important. I'm not sure if this makes the cloud last shorter. I think the cloud lasts the same duration always. I don't think it is dependent on the invisibility duration at all. And the cloud is what applies curse. So that's the most important thing here. Other nice stuff with this, that it clears ailment points, the movement speed is good, breaks any crowd control, and then reducing the cooldown as well. So alternatively, you could have the duration like this, and then have the cooldown just a little bit higher, but there's not really anything else that you would want from this. I mean, the rage cost doesn't really cost anything either. So this chance is basically nothing. This, as far as I can tell, doesn't actually work. Like, even if I target it, it doesn't go anywhere from where I am. So that's kind of weird. Like, my mouse is over here, and it's still just targeted at my feet always. So as far as I can tell, this rune doesn't do anything. and this we don't have Force Shield. So there's basically no rune that actually does anything or is good aside from this. So keeping your cooldown as close to this as possible is probably the best idea. Because you don't need super short cooldown on this. Like 3 seconds is already pretty much plenty to move around with. And then our next skills, you can see we have 2 Phantom Blades here. So the first Phantom Blades, let me find that, is ailment damage, reduced reload time for the charges, and let's see, hold an additional charge. Those are probably the 2 most important runes there. And then leaves a trail. So these leave kind of a trail of like wind. These little like wind circles. It kind of looks like a very faint version of the cloud effect here. And those can apply ailments, and they'll do damage to enemies. So even though this has, you can see bleed and poison chance, 25%. So this will proc multiple times while enemies are standing in it, and so that can stack up your bleeds pretty fast. Then we just get crit chance, crit damage, and ailment damage. This rune is also pretty nice. The slow efficiency of 100% basically means that this is a root, almost, I believe. So on Wailing Arrows, for example, like you can get a slow here, and you can get a slow on some other skills, like on Deathgazer or something. But because this is a root, you can cast it, and then they will be rooted. Hey, there it went, like I was talking about parallel. They will be stuck inside, like your Wailing Arrows, for example, and take more damage. And they'll also be rooted in the wind effect that will apply extra ticks to apply more ailments and keep the ailments stacked high on them. So I should also mention the reason we're applying ailments is because we're, like, the best damage to scale is physical types, or material types, I guess. And that's because you can see the percentage material on attacks with this weapon. You can get at least double flat damage, plus the percentage goes up to 50. And that's the highest damage that you can get on a weapon. There's certain, like, two-handed swords that you can get, which have it implicitly, so these you would want triple flat damage instead. But for bows, at least, that is the best way to scale your damage. And if you got, for example, percentage elemental or percentage occult, it wouldn't scale the base damage of the weapon itself. So percent material is a bit better because it scales the implicit damage of the weapon itself, and that's a huge amount of extra damage. And so if you're already dealing physical, toxic, and rend damage, toxic and rend are the 2 best ailments in terms of, and especially material as a category is best for ailments, because you can see bleed ticks every 0.5 seconds and poison every 0.9. So this essentially has a 2 times multiplier, and this a 1.11 times multiplier on the damage that you see here. So this is not actually 7,000 DPS, it's 14,000 DPS, and this is like 7.9 thousand DPS or something. You can see burn is also pretty good at 0.6, so this is a 1.66 multiplier. So it's, I'm trying to think here, this is like 10,000 DPS, and then shock is every 1 second, so it's just the baseline 6,000 DPS. So if you're doing damage, you can see like my average hit here is 7,000. Most of the average hit on the Phantom Blades is 7,000. Here it's 5,000. Here on Deathgazer it's 5,000. So if you're already doing that damage in a hit, you might as well kind of multiply that damage and actually get much. It's basically free damage that you get. If you're going to be doing damage with a hit of some kind, it's going to have an ailment associated with it, so you might as well get the ailment damage from it, and the investment from that is pretty low. So back to Phantom Blades. The additional charge, like I said, we just go for crit damage. The slow duration is pretty good. It's either like 50% movement speed or it's just a root. I can't tell the difference, but they basically stand still when you use this for 2 seconds. And then you duplicate Phantom Blades and do the same thing where you get the trail rune, you get the maximum charge and the reload time, and then here we convert this to frost damage, so this is the source of our freeze ailment, rather than railgun, and then we just get some other damage from these 2 runes. There's one other rune here. I think it's these 2, the weapon damage by 10% and crit damage, and the crit chance and 20% weapon damage are better in terms of ailment, and we don't need ailment damage from this because our ailment is freeze, and then the poison, we're already getting poison from Phantom Blades itself, and technically Wailing Arrows, and technically Mark of Impurity as well. Mark of Impurity, it says you get resource generation per second. I can't tell if this is actually true, or if it doesn't feel very impactful. Basically, don't rely on this for rage generation. You're going to need to use Death Gazer. And so the benefit of duplicating Phantom Blades is not only can it apply ailments very easily compared to something like Turret, for 0 rage cost, the charge duration, you can see charges gained every 4 seconds, and every 4 seconds, that's the baseline, whereas here the cooldown gets reduced by cooldown reduction. So I have a fair amount of cooldown reduction, but the charges gained time never gets reduced by cooldown reduction. But by duplicating the skill, the charges are independent of each other. So for example, if I duplicated Wailing Arrows and I activated it, I can only activate one Wailing Arrows skill every 3.1 seconds. Basically, the cooldowns are shared between duplicated versions of the ability. Whereas Phantom Blades, the charges are independent with versions of the ability. So I can actually spam out 6 charges here, and they'll start regenning independently of each other. So this essentially doubles the cooldown rate of Phantom Blades, and it allows me to get an extra element via freeze. So in total, we have Bleed Poison, Burn, Freeze, Shock, Stasis, Curse, and via our tree, you'll see we get Weakness. So the only ailment we're missing is Stun, and I'm not even sure it counts as an ailment, actually. So, and we get 30 stacks each. So of the 9 ailments, we get 8 at 30 stacks. So 8 times 30 is 240. So that's the total number of stacks that we will apply to an enemy, if they're like max stacked with everything, 240. So now moving on to our Gates of Fate tree. So starting off, you'll want to start at Soldier and go, this is kind of preference, the 10% max health. I made a video going over why percentage health scaling isn't that much, and the rage cost reduction isn't important here. I think I would actually end up swapping this to the crit damage. Then you just go up for the crit chance node, and then over out here into Assassin, grab Merciless Lethality, move through the dodge chance, grab dodge can go through enemies, and then early on, you'll spin the third wheel around so that it's actually here, and then you'll go to Child of Fury ASAP as your first talent, tree points or whatever. So that's kind of your starting path. And then this is where we get weakness from. By blocking an attack, it applies to everything in 7 meters. So because we're going to be grouping up a whole bunch of mobs, and they'll be hitting us a bunch, this applies 2 weakness stacks, plus the 2 that will apply from our normal tree, and then get multiplied. So it's 4 times 2, so it'll be actually 8 stacks per block. And you don't need very high block chance to max that out at 30 on every enemy within the range. So the block we get mostly from our gear, so we're using a heavy chest piece and a heavy helmet. These can roll with implicit 5% added block chance and allow any weapon to block each. So right now I have 4 and 3%, you can see. So you could get 10% block chance from there. And that is how we activate this. Next up, you'll want to go for the ailment damage into cooldown reduction, and then the material status ailment chance. Apparently this node doesn't work based on what the devs just posted today. This 60% ailment score thing doesn't work. I don't know, but I have it taken anyway. You would want that in the build eventually anyway. Then you'll, from here, you'll just grab this single node. You don't need to go in here for the dodge chance stuff yet. Just grab this single node and then path through here around the outside. You don't need any of these inner nodes. You don't need the extra ailment stacks yet. And you'll go here, and then you'll go, you'll have the tree spun one more to the left, if you can imagine. So this will end up here, and this will end up, oh no, yeah, when you're pathing to this section with the Time Weaver section will end up being here, I believe, when you're leveling. So you only need to go from this corner here to here, and then you go up and get Time Weaver, which time cannot heal ASAP, and the differential wounds. And then that's kind of your baseline like starting path for damage. And then from there, you'll just finish out getting Kabbalist, getting Grievous Afflictions. You can also get this. It's just 2 points on your way. And then grabbing stuff like 50% ailment damage. There's 30% there, 50% there. So you'll end up grabbing this node. You'll grab these nodes. Eventually, once Primordial Insights is working, it's 2 points to grab these. This node is apparently currently bugged, but it's 5% damage for each ailment stack on that enemy, up to 5% per damage type. So I believe this is 25 times 8 is the max it can go with our current setup. So that is 200% damage, but apparently this is multiplicative and it's not supposed to be or something. So I guess currently I'm not taking this, but this is a lot of extra damage. Of course, while you're going through here, you'll want the 2% global life leech. This works on ailments, so it works off your ailment like tick damage or whatever. Here you get 40% of damage and then inflicted after 1 second. We want bruiser items for the most part, and you can see here the implicit on pants is health regeneration rate. And if we go into our stats, health regeneration rate, this is the time that healing tick happens. This goes up to 10%. You can get this down to 0.9, and then it will your leech will basically apply before you have the second tick of dire juncture happen. So this prevents one shots very effectively. And here you pick up the other ailment stacks, and then I route through the force shield right now. We don't have any force shield. You could get aether damage, but we don't deal any aether damage, so neither of these really matter. You can pick whichever one is you'd like more, I guess. I don't know. Then here we grab 2% more damage per unspent rage. This is all forms of damage, so this works on ailments. Then here we're getting Bestial Frenzy. This is nearby enemies, so when we're doing the big pop explosion in late game, you'll pick up these 2 nodes also, and then you'll have, this is multiplicative, so it's 5% damage per enemy, so that's pretty good. And then once you get kind of most of your offense there, in addition to getting like these points probably, then you can start going for more defense. So one of the earliest and most powerful things I would suggest is getting Salvatory Anchor. So here I go through block efficiency, but mostly I'm going here for the all resistance. And then this is, if you have a heavy chest piece, you basically double the all resistance score from your chest and helmet. So we're already using the helmet and chest heavy for block chance instead of getting it on the tree, because the tree nodes are very inefficient. Like here you can get 10%, whereas here, for example, it's 2 points to get 6%. Here's I can get 1 point for 5%. There's like a couple other nodes on the tree or whatever that give like some minor percent. You can get 3% added there. There's like another 5% somewhere. There's 10% in here. These are mass evasion and high evasion. It's 10% block chance. The hidden text here is with two-handed weapons only, but bows count as a two-handed weapon. So both of those do work on bows. In addition, so yeah, defensively, Salvatory Anchor, super huge. You're already getting Dire Juncture. Going in here for Branded Burst, the Tenant points, also very strong at preventing one-shots. And then going in here and just finishing out for the percent dodge chance score after taking a hit. So basically, most of the offensive part of the build is complete after level 65. And then the defensive kind of core is complete after level 79 or 81, depending on if this gets fixed or not, and you want to add those 2 points. And so that's kind of where the build is and how it looks. Talking about gear, like I already mentioned, you want heavy chest piece and helmet with as much resistance score as you can, so you want flat and percentage, and then flat and percentage. Both of these items are pretty good. They're adding a ton of resist. For your gems, you want all flat health. I go over that in the percent health, like max HP scaling, how it works in toughness video. And then rest of your gear, you want bruiser stuff. So here, flat health, here, flat health, here, flat health, here, flat health. Pants, you want bruiser. On your pants, chest, and helmet, you want cooldown reduction if possible. And then boots, you want movement speed and flat health. On rings, you basically want to look for percent damage, or flat damage, and then percent crit hit damage. Those are the two most important things. Health is really good after that. Let me check my notes here. Those are the main 3 things. You can get double flat damage, 30% crit damage. You want steel rings for the 30% crit hit damage implicit. Belt, you want either the 30% attack damage or the 30% crit chance score. I'm not sure which one yet. I think the crit chance score will end up being better. Belt, and that goes up to 30% implicit. And then again, just flat damage, flat HP, and crit damage. Amulet, you ideally want an all stats amulet. The flat, or like the single attribute ailment or amulets go up to 25, whereas the all stats goes to 20. So you lose 5 in one attribute to gain 60 in all your other attributes in total. So the all attributes one is definitely way better. Balance there seems kind of weird. I would expect the single attribute ones to be like 50 or something, not 25. I don't know. It's weird. Here you just want flat damage to attacks, flat HP, crit damage again. Those are the main things. On your weapon, like I already mentioned, crit damage, and then double flat damage and percentage material damage, and then after that, whatever. I'm not sure if you can get health on a bow. I don't think so. I believe you can get damage per unspent rage on chest and helmet. I think that's with the untainted mods, so that would also be pretty good. On your rings, I already mentioned. So these you want defensive 3 and you want flat health. Your rings you want support 3 and you want transfer time. I'm not sure if going for, I don't have them, I guess, support 2 willpower regeneration. From what I tested, this doesn't seem to work with the your willpower regeneration is transferred into rage node. I think what this actually does is it only works on willpower you generate from staff attacks or something. I don't know exactly. I've heard, basically it seems to be working weird, and transfer time seems to work better. So just go for transfer time instead for now. That's most of the stats. Oh yeah, you want movement speed on boots, obviously. Those are most of the important stats, I would say. And what else? Oh yeah. Let's talk about attributes. So, right now I have wisdom until I have 20% or 25% ailment chance with my poison and bleed. And that seems to be about a good sweet spot for it. I've invested maybe like 150 or something, or 100 wisdom into this. It's not a whole lot, but it's just enough that because ailments have a hard cap, you don't need like 50% ailment chance or whatever, because you're going to just hit 30 stacks super quickly, and then it's not really doing anything for you at that point. You just need to hit it often enough that they reapply. And the duration on these, the shortest duration is 2.5 seconds, I believe. Yeah, so as long as you're reapplying it every 2.5 seconds, you're fine, I think. I'm not sure, like if you apply, like I don't think the stacks are dynamic. Like I don't think the first stack has a 2.5 second duration, and then the like each stack has an independent duration from each other. I think as long as you refresh it once every 2.5 seconds, you're fine. And bleed especially, it's the shortest duration but the highest tick rate. So on your tree, I believe you technically get higher toxic damage, but that was with an old version I was doing. So now you might actually be fine going rend damage on your weapon. So the important thing on your weapon is you want rend and toxic to be the two highest, so that you apply it with the no runed phantom blades, since that's the main thing that applies poison and bleed. Otherwise, everything else you can see, nothing else applies bleed, only poison, because it's my highest thing. I guess this applies bleed. Oh, it's because it's the same thing and it's my basic attack. Yeah. So I believe you actually want double rend to be the highest. The highest 2 gems in the weapon. Whoops. And that's just to apply bleeds slightly more reliably, because now instead of these skills applying poison, they'll apply bleed. And because it has a shorter duration, I need higher uptime on it, or more reliable uptime, to get the max DPS value out of it. So that's just like a minor thing. That's the most important thing. So yeah, wisdom to 25%. I think once, or if this node is broken, or if it starts working, you'll need less wisdom, so I'll have even more points to spend. Ferocity, I have 0 points invested in Ferocity. This is all coming from my gear. So you'll get 20 from the amulet. You can get 20 each on shoulders, so that's 20 plus 40, so that's 60, plus another 20 per gloves. So this is 40, 80, 100. Plus 20 from legs and boots. Or just boots, because legs have the health regen. So 120 base, plus your base, which is going to be 90. So you'll have 210 baseline, plus whatever you get from gear. So you can see here I have plus 31, there I have plus 58, there I have 85 toughness, that's not what we want, plus 50 there, plus 73 there. plus 55 there. I'm not looking for ferocity. I'm just looking for flat health mainly. But I'm just getting enough. I would invest some points in ferocity, enough to get about 33% crit chance. I think that's about the sweet spot. But I have 38 with 0 investment in it right now, so I am above, doing good for that. Crit damage is nice, as I already mentioned. Currently, crit damage doesn't work with ailments. Once it does, this will be a big source of your damage. Put 0 points in agility ever if you can. The scaling on agility is super bad. If I, for example, right now I have like 700 something points to invest. Right now I have 16% attack speed. If I invest like every single point of agility I can, I go up to like 50% or something. Like the scaling on this is super bad. Your DPS like hardly increases at all when you invest into agility. The diminishing returns on this are really bad. The attack speed scaling is really bad. Like they need to like double or even triple or quadruple the attack speed scaling you get from agility to make it worth it for DPS, because with crit scaling with crit damage also and ailments, like I don't know, agility scaling is super weird. So toughness, because like wisdom kind of has a soft / a hard cap around 25% because of the max ailment stacks that you can have. Crit, it's not working with crit damage right now for ailments. You don't need that much crit anyways. I would say there's probably a hard cap on crit chance that you want around 50%, but 33% is kind of a good soft cap. And then everything else from there can go into toughness. If I reset my attributes here, I'm not going to do it just because I'm lazy, but right now I have 131k health. Without the points invested into toughness, I have like 40k. So the points invested into toughness are like more than tripling my health bar, which is more than tripling my effective HP pool. And these other things kind of have soft and hard caps where they don't scale your damage very much. And in late game, you can get one shot, which is why you start investing more defensively once you have most of your damage nodes on the tree. Because the bosses do hit fairly hard. And so that's why we're also getting stuff like dodge chance, things like that. You need dodge chance score from your gear. So right now I only have 15% dodge chance, which isn't that great. We're not scaling block chance, mostly because block efficiency is very hard to scale now. Because, for example, the baseline block efficiency is 15%. Without a shield, if I got 100% block efficiency, I would only increase it to 30%. So the damage reduction you're getting by scaling block efficiency is very low compared to dodge, which is very easy to scale for a much smaller investment. And so I'll go now and look at the tree. So I showed that you're going to put 2 more points here, 1, 2, 3 points there. So that's 5, 6, 7 points there. And I think that's most of the important things. Double checking real quick. I think that's correct. So after that, you basically can start just going into defense. So my plan is to come in here, grab Ferocity, and then grab these 3 18% all resist nodes. And those are quite strong. And then for damage, this node currently doesn't work. Oracle of the Trinity. I'm not sure if this is 50% ailment chance score and 50% crit chance score. But if it's 50% ailment chance and 50% crit chance, this node is insane. Like, this is the best DPS node on the tree if it's just 50% flat chance to each. So yeah, I'm not sure which one is to which. Like, I assume it's Fire, Frost, Lightning in that order. So Abanazar's is Fire, and then Ethaliel's is Frost. And so you might want to eventually not inflict one of these ailments. Like, you might not want Burn in order to guarantee that you get the 2 other accords. But right now this node is broken and basically doesn't do anything as far as I know. So this is another good DPS node to get. If you're not getting this node, you can just get some other nodes in here, like 18% all resist, 20% all resist. There's 12% all resist here. There's like 12% here. There's 9% each from these 2. There's another 12% and max HP here. So there's a couple good other all resist nodes. That's basically what you would do to scale your defense a little bit higher for as long as this node is broken. And then yeah, always you can pick up this whenever this gets fixed as well. So yeah, basically that's how the tree's looking. That's how the build is looking. I'm not going to go through and demonstrate the gameplay. I guess I could real quick. Okay, I'm not going to roll modifiers or anything. Just going to go through, quickly demonstrate. Basically, when you walk around, you just want to stealth around. Basically, you can open up with wailing arrows and then fire the railgun, and that will like alert mobs to your presence later, whereas if you railgun first and then wailing arrows, the hit, like, you can still get the stasis applied enough, maybe not for the first hit of wailing arrows, but if you railgun first and then wailing arrows, like, mobs will charge at you or jump at you or whatever, and so if I like railgun and then aim a wailing arrows over here, they might jump on me and then the wailing arrows misses and doesn't get very much damage out. So, and then you just go the poison and bleed and then the freeze after that. So you can see stealth around, do stuff like this, drop these, and then pretty much just rotate those 4 abilities, and then keep going. And that's how you clear the rift pretty much. Things die pretty easily. When you get up into the later tiers, you'll need to start marking stuff with Mark of Impurity in order to explode it, in order to kill it in like a reasonable amount of time. Once you get the trial belt, that's like a huge increase for this build, because then you don't need the skill on your skill bar, from what I understand. And you can change some of the runes on the Phantom Blades to... This increases area of effect. This is also pretty good. I'm considering dropping like some of the increased damage and crit chance nodes for this. The increase on this is quite big. I'll just demonstrate this real quick. The width on it gets quite a bit bigger. I don't think it goes longer range. I think the range is always set. But it is quite a bit bigger in terms of range and the ailment area. So that might be nicer. I think this is better for single target damage and for just blowing up a single mob that then you're going to explode. So might be just a little bit better. When you're fighting like a boss or whatever, you'll want to go like this, where you Dusk Shroud on top of them, and you'll want to be standing in mobs anyway, so that you get the increased damage per nearby enemy type thing. And you pretty much do this going around the rift. You want to clear as much of the rift as like Woody Joe mentions in his video, much of the rift early on as possible, so that then you can have a bunch of trash near the end. You can see there, the mobs didn't like recognize that I was in the area until after I shot the wailing arrows. This guy has regeneration, so he is very tough to kill. If I can get a good pop here. That did some damage. So I'm missing the damage from the Immortal Offering node right now, so I guess my damage is too low to try and do this, and I went a little bit too defensive, because I didn't want to use that if the node was bugged, but I think I might just have to use that right now in order to keep clearing at a reasonable pace and deal with these regeneration tough mobs. But yeah, you can dodge roll pretty easily in fights with the stamina that you regen from Dusk Shroud, and then you pretty much just do this. Keep your hatred pretty high. You almost always want to Death Laser before using Wailing Arrows so that you have high rage and can use it, and that's pretty much how the build works. So that's basically it. That's all I got. Hopefully that helps anybody looking to do a similar build and wants to really optimize it for endgame. A lot of it is just math and knowing what stuff works, what stuff doesn't work, and how to scale stuff properly for like high amounts of damage, because it's really confusing when not a lot of stuff has tooltips or accurate tooltips or works or functions in the first place. But yeah, this build seems pretty good. It seems pretty effective. Like I said, I've been just steadily progressing myself, like all solo self-found or whatever. The only thing I did was the gold dupe, just so that you could experiment with builds a little bit more. But yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for watching.